Hello everybody, welcome back to Punk Write. My name is Smee. One of the things I've been working on in my own writing is to try to take the things that I know and simplify them and do them better. Points of view is one of those areas I didn't realize how ineffective I could be or how I could use those points of views incorrectly that really distracted from what I was trying to do with my characters and my storytelling. In today's episode of Punk Write, we're going to look at points of view and how you can get the most out of their usage. Stick around. If you're anything like me, you've probably spent a lot of time reading and researching and watching videos and trying to really get the basic techniques down in terms of writing. Of course, doing it is something very, very different. When we look at points of view, those are things that we've been learning about literally since middle school, and being overt about how you use them is really going to strengthen your storytelling and your technique in the craft. So before we go any further today, let's just take a look at the main viewpoints or the points of view and what are the advantages and disadvantages of using each one in your writing. Probably one of the most common usages is what we call the single person or the single character point of view, also known as the first person point of view. This is probably used most in any kind of young adult fiction. I would say also that literary fiction tends to use this single character point of view and really delve deeply into the mind of the character. This is a definite advantage of this type of point of view because it allows you to focus immensely on that single character. I think one of the things that you have to be careful with, which is what turns me off a little bit about this point of view in some writing, is that the author, even though it might come out easier because you're actually involved in the story, because you're telling it from a first person or your own point of view, you have to be very careful that you don't become narcissistic about your storytelling. To give you a clear example, there's a book I'm reading now which is by a Filipino. It's telling a story about a Filipino boy, and it says that it's a work of fiction, but somehow when I get into that reading, I look and I'm like, I see that this is your mind, this is your life. And sometimes I think it can detract from the story because it really confuses the author and the character. You don't know which voice you're listening to. So if you're going to use first person, be careful with how you use it and make sure that you still need to build character in the exact same way, using other dialogue, other character dialogue, and even narrative when possible to be able to get the most from that first person character without just getting stuck in the mind of the author. There is the second person, or using the voice of you, but this is really not very common in fiction. You might see it on rare occasion in letters perhaps, or short excerpts, but very rarely do you see an entire book that is being told in the second person point of view. For me, it's very distracting and at times condescending, and I would really work to avoid this. My preferred point of view in terms of writing, and this is just a thing of taste in terms of how you can feel the story being told, is the third person point of view. The third person point of view can be told in two different aspects. You have what's called the limited omniscient or the omniscient, and they are just that. Limited omniscient means that you have chosen a few characters, probably a single character more than another, where you're going to have some information about what's going on in the mind of that character. It doesn't mean that you have all of the knowledge. All of the knowledge would be an omniscient viewpoint. The omniscient viewpoint allows you to jump into different people's minds, to know what's going on even outside of their minds, and this is a full and complete perspective of the storytelling. This gives you a lot of leeway, a lot of capability. And so for me, the third person limited omniscient is generally preferable because it allows you to create a little bit of mystery. It allows you to withhold and use information in different ways according to the character that you're in. If you're going to use a limited omniscient, you have to be very wary that you stick to a single character viewpoint one at a time. As a new writer, one of the things I struggled with and still need to pay attention to is the jumping back and forth from one character's mind to another character's mind within a single scene. You can do this, and you can do it quite effectively, but usually in your writing you're going to use spacings, or you're going to use breaks, or perhaps new chapters to be able to define which character's mind you're talking about and give me information according to that character's mind. Another advantage that you're going to gain from this is that inside that character's mind, you only know what that character knows and what that character perceives. And so you have to be careful and take a step back as an author, because you know everything, but you don't want to give the reader everything because you're working within a limited perspective or a limited viewpoint. One of the things in my writing that I've really had to pay attention to is what is called head hopping, and that is jumping back from one character to another within the same scene, and it becomes really confusing and kind of jarring for your reader. Stick to a single viewpoint. Use the information for that character only within that scene, and if you want to change perspectives, make sure that you use some sort of a breaker to really show the reader that, hey, I'm switching, I'm in somebody else's mind. So when you think about choosing certain viewpoints, of course, you're going to make some executive decision from the beginning of your book to figure out how do you want to tell the story. If you're going to use multiple viewpoints or limited viewpoints with multiple characters, some things you might want to think about are the following. First, who has the most to learn? If you want to expose or demonstrate some information, think about the character who is going to gain the most from that experience and tell that specific scene from that character's point of view. That's going to allow the reader to gain and learn along with this viewpoint character, and that is a very effective way that keeps things interesting and moving. And as an author, it gives you some leeway to expose the important information without boring me with just plain narrative. Number two, who has the most to lose? This is also an important question to ask yourself, because it creates some natural suspense for the character. If you are in a limited viewpoint in a single character and they are struggling with an issue, that's fun to read about. It's fun and enticing in terms of that discovery and creating tension for your character. And number three, in terms of thinking about how do you withhold information from the reader so that you don't want to just lay it all out, because if you do that at the beginning, or you have overly narrative chunks in your writing, you're going to lose and bore the reader a little bit. Withholding information is an ability that you have, or the technique that you have, to be able to just give me teasers and lead me along and keep that story progressing effectively. And again, I want to reiterate, you must only tell me, if you're using a limited omniscient viewpoint, what that character knows. As the author, you have full capacity. You know what's going to happen. You can build the world as you wish, but your character doesn't know that. Do not let your own thoughts sift into that character's mind. Make sure that only the character is expressing what he or she knows. Of course, how you use the viewpoints in terms of the narrative is a balance that you're going to have to figure out as an author. But understanding these gives you a couple of different marbles to build your pouch. You can use them and intertwine them so that I can make sure that I can keep my prose moving back and forth and differentiate it so that it's not boring. And that is the key. You do not want to be boring. Good writing is about flow and entertainment. Very well, so let us recapitulate today's episode. First things, understand your points of view. Decide from the beginning what is going to be the most effective way that you can tell your story, and stick to that point of view. If you are using limited omniscient points of view, then you have to make sure that you are not confusing different viewpoints within the same scenes. Separate scenes and stay away from head hopping. Number four, manipulate the points of view so that you can tease the reader with necessary information and limited information so that you can keep your story moving. As you practice this in your writing, I'm sure that you'll find that your technique is going to improve and your writing is going to flow better and be more entertaining to the reader. Thanks for joining us today on Punk Write. If you like today's content, please hit the like button or subscribe if you've not already subscribed, and tune back to the channel for more writing perspective and advice. Till then, you just keep on writing. Punk write.